Hey, welcome to Film versus Movie, the podcast where we debate the cinema you hate. I'm your co-host, Belton DeLaine-Facey.
And my name's Chris Shurr.
And on this podcast, we watch the films that have been slandered, desecrated, and buried on the side of the highway of public opinion. And one of us tells you why it's actually pretty good.
And the other one tells you why it's a steaming pile of shit.
And today, we're going to be debating the 1990 crime biopic Goodfellas, which follows the life of Henry Hill, who was in the mafia.
Yeah, he was in the mafia.
Yeah, that's basically it's almost like that's how he would describe his life.
Probably so. I mean, I don't know. He's a little up on his high horse. Anytime he's like, yeah, we're good fellas, we're wise guys. No, they're just criminals.
Yeah.
As much as they do a pretty good job of just making a huge bunch of assholes seem like fun people to be around.
Yeah, it's basically like, this is just gang activity with white privilege. All right, so getting into the plot of this movie, it starts with a flash forward of three guys burying a body, and then the quote, "As far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a gangster," which is low bar set for yourself.
Yeah, that's as far back as I can remember, I want to be homeless. That's an attainable dream.
Yeah, I remember I saw something on Twitter. It's just like, being proud to be a gang member once you're past the age of 20 is just ghetto as hell. It's like that's how we need to start referring to the mob. They're just ghetto white people.
I just if you're a comedian, you go to open mics where he's just I went to a few mob tryouts. He's like, I was parking cars and they would give me a wad of cash and I'd deliver the wad of cash, but I wouldn't get any of the cash. He's like, I'm working for free. It's like they have internships for the mob.
All right. So then the film goes back to 1955 where Henry Hill is a teenager. It goes through how he got involved and infatuated with the mafia and how he met Tommy and Jimmy, who would be his I almost want to say colleagues in the mafia.
They're his brothers.
Yeah.
They're his friends.
Yeah. And so then we go into the 1960s. Henry, Tommy, and Jimmy are doing mafia stuff. He meets and marries Karen, who gets turned on after he beats a man that harassed her. It's basically like the old school version of Will Smith at the Oscars.
I love the whole Summer of Love, Woodstock, the hippie generation. These guys were like, nah, fuck that. The 50s were the best.
Yeah, it's like the 50s stereotype that's the time you could beat your wife. Well, it's I guess he cleared the bar by just beating someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now going to 1970, Tommy, Jimmy, and Henry are hanging out at a bar. Some guy named Billy Bats insults Tommy, and in retaliation, Tommy kills him, not realizing Billy Bats is a made man within the mafia, and so that would bring retaliation. And so that's the flash forward at the beginning. They're burying his body. Which also I have to say, with this being the mafia, everyone has some weird nickname, and they're the part of the movie where they just go through them.
Henry Hill does he have a nickname?
I don't think Henry does, but there's there's Tommy 2 Time. You call him 2 Time because he says everything 2 times.
It's like Ricky 2 feet. He's got 2 feet. He walks on 2 feet. They're he's a pretty uninteresting person.
Yeah. There's some guy named Spider. They never say how he got the name Spider. Which I also imagine at some point you gotta give everyone nicknames because everyone's named Tommy or something. Everyone's wife is Marie. You gotta figure some system.
Yeah, I want a cool mafia nickname. I want them to be hey, it's Chrissy Crossdresser. She likes to wear women's clothing, and we're all cool with that for some reason.
I don't know. I feel like that would open up like some businesses to have it as a front for the mafia. Like, I don't think anyone's going to suspect like a thrift shop in Bushwick.
I just meant like the scene where they're taking dresses off the truck and they're like, bring it down to Darren. He's gonna look beautiful in this silk robe. He's performing at a drag bar tonight, and we want to support him.
So going along with the plot, Henry witnesses Tommy kill the young bartender named Spire after he assaults him, and soon after that, Karen discovers Henry has a mistress, and she points a gun threatening him. After that, he just moves in with the mistress, which I'm not supporting adultery, but that does seem like the logical conclusion after your wife points a gun at you.
Yeah, he was like acting out of self-interest to a certain extent.
Yeah, and then soon after that, Paulie, who's like the boss of the mafia, insists that Henry move back in with Karen because it just looks bad.
For as much as they're like, oh, these women are gonna bring me down, these women are gonna destroy me, they're all so dumb. Like, he does give a lot of his business just for the women to handle.
Yeah,
like you'd think like the ideal mobster wouldn't have a wife and just does everything himself. But they're always like, we gotta blend in. We gotta have like, is the FBI going around? They're like, oh shit, that guy doesn't have a wife. He's probably a mobster.
Yeah, no, it's funny because like earlier in the movie, it shows Karen with like hang out with the other mafia wives, and they're just blatantly talking about business. Like they all understand that their husbands are into some shady stuff, and she's just like, wow, these women kind of suck. It's like all I'm saying. None of those women had to point guns at their husbands.
Well, yeah, you don't fuck with those women. Were tough.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, soon after that, Paulie tells him like, "Hey, you gotta move back in Karen, make things look right." It's like, do that after you handle this problem in Tampa for me. Which is like, again, this all takes place in what, East New York. How'd someone get to Tampa and they just know the guys in Tampa? This is the 70s. There wasn't even internet back then.
It's like I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. That's the only thing about these mafia movies. I'd never be able to live because they keep talking without specifically saying who they're talking about. They're like, oh yeah, you know that guy who's friends with that other guy who did that thing for that guy? And if anyone ever said that to me, I'd be like, what the fuck? Can you use names? Like, I know we're trying to be discreet, but could you be like, you know, the guy who wears blue shirts on Tuesdays? Like, be a little more specific. Like, I'd just be like, yeah, I know that guy. And then I'd be in Pittsburgh and they'd be like, we needed you in Tampa. The guy with the guy, not the guy with the guy. Like,
it's like, we were talking about Billy Blue Shirt. What are you doing here?
Oh, I thought we were talking about Bobby Brown Pants.
All right. So yeah, they go to Tampa to collect debt. In the process, they beat this guy whose sister just happens to work for the FBI, and that's how they get caught. They get sentenced to 10 years in prison, and like whole time they're in prison, they're living it up. Like honestly, their prison cell looked better than my apartment, and.
I almost I don't get why they even had to stay in there to an extent.
Yeah.
Like they're just like, yeah, we smuggled in like a stove and a fridge and fresh meat.
Yeah. Like the thing is they supposedly like paid off guards and had people smuggling things in for them so they could have like a nice Italian dinner every night. It's like, at that point, why leave?
Couldn't you just pay off the guards to be like, oh yeah, he's in there. Yeah. Oh yeah. I saw him last week. He's definitely in. Like, where in the prison were they? At some point, Henry Hill just like walks out of a room and he's just in a regular fucking prison.
Yeah, because also like considering how big their cell is, essentially it looks like they took down walls of connecting cells to make them. They had their own home renovation.
I'm just imagining there's like a guest book that different mobsters sign when they're in there. It was like before that, it was like Jimmy of the Trattori family, 3 years, armed robbery. And then it's like, had a nice time, enjoy the beds, left some like jarred marinara sauce under the sink. Like it's like a guest book to me.
Yeah. I'm also imagining it's like a Shawshank thing where it's like they just had so many guys go to prison where it's like, look, get the same cells. We're going to give you a small pickaxe, just knock down the walls after 20 years. Then for the rest of the time, our organization will just have a really nice place when we go to prison. All right. So yeah, after 4 years, Henry gets out, I assume for good behavior. He immediately starts dealing cocaine against Paulie's orders. Paulie's like, you're on probation, lay low. This is how you don't get caught again. But he does it anyway because, I don't know, love of the game.
Yeah, that's when it just, at a certain point, like in the beginning, they're like, yeah, when we want something, we take it. And you're like, oh, it's like a very easy way to get rich. But by the end, they're working like 10 different jobs. I feel like if you just put all your mind to like, you take $50,000 cash and then just invest it in the stock market.
Yeah, it's like this should have come out in like 2012 during the whole hustle culture era. Where you had guys bragging like, yeah, I worked 80 hours this week at 6 different jobs. And it's like, they're still just like middle income. It's like, that's not a brag. You clearly have a lot of skills. Why don't you just get a 6-figure office job? Yeah. So they're dealing drugs. Then Jimmy organizes a crew to pull off a big heist at JFK. They do it, but then a lot of guys just start spending big money immediately, which, look, I've never been part of the mafia, but I feel like that's crime 101. Like you do a big hit, you wait for things to cool off before you start buying like $50,000 cars.
Yeah, that's fair. Are the FBI looking for that? They're like, hey, if you see any Italians buying nice things for the next 3 months, it's probably stolen.
I mean, I imagine it would be a flare up because, like, you go to a car dealership, you do have to sign paperwork, and it's just like, all right, this guy, and like they have your tax records, like, all right, this guy who's in a very low tax bracket just paid $50,000 cash, like that's suspicious. But soon after that, their getaway truck is actually caught. So soon after, to cover his tracks, Jimmy just starts having a bunch of the crew killed, but not Tommy and Henry because they're still cool. And soon after, Tommy is told he's being made by the organization, and they're happy for him. They're ready to celebrate. Turns out they're just gonna kill Tommy for killing Billy Bats, among other things, and so. That's why those things, which, look, again, if this was a normal job, Tommy should be fired, and that is the mafia's way of firing people. he was just a reckless employee, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about like mafia. I don't know how anybody ever lets people walk behind them. Like anytime it just turned into like a sitcom where if I was in the mafia and I had to walk somewhere, I'd be like, after you. And they'd be like, no, after you. And I'd be like, no. And I'd be like, oh, okay, I'll go first. And then I'd just like shimmy along the wall with my back against.
No, I'm just imagining like, because that makes sense, but it's like the rule in like the age of TikTok, because I'm not sure. Sure, if you heard like there's like the date rule where it's like if you're in one of those seats where it's like one is a booth, one's a regular chair, the woman's supposed to get the booth. I'm imagining a girl getting on TikTok like, why was this guy so insistent that he sit in the booth? And all the comments are like, your boyfriend's in the mafia. It's clear.
He's just like, I like having my back covered.
It's like, why does he always have his hand on his waist? All right, so now we're in 1980. Henry is just on coke all the time, and he's super paranoid. He's still dealing, which again, don't get high on your own supply. Also feels like crime 101. Like, have these guys ever watched a mafia movie? I feel like they should.
Yeah. He just kind of went with reckless abandon, just about like doing cocaine. And I don't know, it's like a great sequence of how cocaine fucks you up.
Yeah.
That whole scene where he's just sitting there and he's like, yeah, so I'd go drop off the guns, but like that sauce was real fucking important.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, it's like all right, he didn't want the guns, so I gotta figure out another place off loan, but guns where I can still make a profit. And it's like I gotta call Billy. It's like, hey, make sure you stir that sauce. So yeah, he's doing all that until he gets arrested for narcotics. Karen bails him out, but reveals she flushed away $60,000 worth of cocaine so that the police wouldn't find it. Which he's upset because that was his backup, but it's like, also, if the police have a warrant on your house, that is a very reasonable thing to do.
Yeah, I'm just imagining him like immediately going to sell more cocaine, and they're like, did you think we wouldn't be following you?
Yeah, because also like he's really mad at her. He also didn't offer up any solutions. Like he wasn't like, why didn't you just stick it up your ass like a normal drug dealer? Yeah. But yeah, soon after Henry starts going to like his contacts for help, particularly Jimmy, he becomes aware it very much looks like Jimmy's planning to kill him. So he's like, I can't trust anyone. So he becomes an informant, enters witness protection, and the movie ends with him and Karen in their suburban home.
Jimmy almost would have been better off just like helping him.
Yeah, but it's funny because like they never like confirmed whether or not Jimmy was actually gonna kill him. So like I imagine like it is possible that Jimmy's in court and he's like, "What the fuck? I was trying to like offer you a good paying job. Like I was trying to get us reconnected."
He's like, "All right, I'll go help you in Tampa." He's like, "But I'm just gonna lean against the wall the whole time."
Yeah. He's like looking at it's like, Karen, what the hell? I told you to go around the corner and pick up the money. All right, well, so this film was based on the nonfiction book Wise Guy by Nicholas Pileggi, who also co-wrote the script with the director. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, Martin Scorsese, something like that. But yeah, so Pileggi did extensive interviews with the real life Henry and Karen for the book. And throughout the movie, there are voiceovers, and apparently a lot of the voiceovers were pulled from those interviews.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and like for their performance, he gave Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, and Joe Pesci extra like notes that weren't included in the book to give it more authentic. Apparently, Martin Scorsese didn't want the actors talking to the real life counterparts because he's like that would disrupt the performance. Although apparently the real life Henry Hill did say Joe Pesci's portrayal of Tommy was 90 to 99% accurate, with the exception the real guy was apparently real built and stocky.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which like I feel also changes things because when you watch his performance, it feels really built on the fact Joe Pesci is like short, has kind of a weird sounding voice.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of pulls the whole character together that he's like an insecure short guy.
Yeah.
So just finding out he's like a tall, ripped guy. What was he so insecure about?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that ruins it for me. How dare the real life guy not be short?
Like a huge guy's like, you think I'm funny? You just be like shitting your pants.
Yeah.
As a short guy, you're like, oh, you're a little funny. I don't know.
Yeah, and speaking of that, so they apparently improvised a lot during rehearsals and wrote some of those into the script. One of those things was the whole "you think I'm funny" sequence, which apparently Joe Pesci came up with because when he was young, working in a restaurant, he actually had an interaction similar to that with an actual mobster.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where he was just like a server or bus boy making conversation. And he made some comments like, that's very funny. Guys just went, you think I'm funny? Like a clown's like, like that. Like I get it. Like it feels so ridiculous for a mobster to just be saying that to some like teenager.
What a miserable like life to live.
Yeah,
where you're just like, oh yeah, everything's a front. Like everything's an attack on me.
Yeah, and so, and then apparently the director was real dedicated to authenticity and accuracy to the point he hired real mobsters as extras throughout the film. Reportedly, they all on the employment paperwork, they all put down fake social security numbers, so no one knows how they got paid.
I mean, probably cash.
Yeah, probably cash. I'm imagining they had like someone at the production office just call them up. It's like, hey, we really need to sort out your paperwork so you guys get paid. And they're like, hey, we got someone going over to take the money. You'll know who it is. Just give it to our guy.
I'm just imagining like these aren't even the main characters. So I'm just imagining like someone watching the film and they're looking in the background and there's some guy just standing there and he's like, it's not how mobsters stand. They're like, this isn't very authentic. Like, can we get some real mobsters?
Yeah. And then also, if you remember the scene where they're at Tommy's house and his mother makes them a meal, apparently Tommy's mother was played by Scorsese's real life mother, Catherine. However, she was not told that in that scene her son had just killed someone and they had the body in the trunk outside. She was just told essentially like, oh, your son's home with his friends and you're making them a nice meal. Which, like, I do feel like that's the way to do it, but I also want to know what her reaction was when she saw the movie.
Oh, I love this one. One dog going one way, one dog going the
other. So the movie came out September 21st, 1990. It apparently had one of the worst audience test screenings in the studio's history.
Really?
Yeah, and then they just apparently didn't change much before a release, which is a ballsy move. I hope this Scorsese guy was able to find some work afterwards. Because it didn't do too well at the box office. It made $47 million on a $25 million budget. Is as of recording, the Rotten Tomato score stands at 95, IMDb 8.7, which is definitely high for this podcast.
I mean, 95 is decent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I know.
And that's got a solid 100.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whatever.
And then received a couple Oscar nominations. Joe Pesci managed to slide in and win for Best Supporting Actor. And he also notably has what has to be the shortest acceptance speech in Oscars history.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you just go like, thank you?
Yes, that's exactly what he did.
Or did you go, thanks?
Yeah, no. You know, I highly recommend anyone go to YouTube and watch the footage because it has like all the same pageantry that they usually have for the Oscars, like going through all the nominations, being very flowery with the compliments of them. When he's walking to the stage, he looks very emotional, and then he's just like, "Wow, thanks," and walks off. Like, it's very clear the guys doing the music are they're just like taking a water break and they're like, oh, we didn't expect to be on so early. All right. Well, now it's time for our opening statements. I will be defending this film. Chris will be attacking.
Yes, I will. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah,
or
I'll
should
go
I?
first. Now, you may have seen the meme of Joe Pesci walking into a room, but what if I told you there was a whole movie behind it? Coming from a hungry, up-and-coming filmmaker, this film has everything you want in a movie. Drugs, guns, excellent work of the craft, people who shoot the guns. This high-intensity biopic keeps you on the edge of the seat the entire way.
Goodfellas is a great movie. If you enjoy content that glorifies the worst in society, it's a white male fantasy film that incels in college watch when they don't get invited to parties. The type of people who say Fridays for the girlfriends and Saturdays for the wives, and then they spend the whole weekend watching American Psycho and emulating Patrick Bateman. It's not a good film. To start this off, I'm just going to come out and say it. The female characters in this film have no agency whatsoever. It seems like the take on women in general is women dumb, men smart. I swear to God, the mobsters keep shuffling off parts of their business to the women, and then every time they're like, oh my God, these women are so fucking stupid, they're going to ruin us. But like, I don't know. They don't portray women very well in this film.
Okay, but I will say, like, Karen, I thought her characterization was good because she is aware, at the very least at all times, he lives a shady lifestyle, and she's cool with it. She actually has an arc of learning to be cool with it, and like trying to adapt, and like after watching this movie, I get why Breaking Bad fans hate Skyler. Like yeah, your husband's a drug dealer, but he's also paying your bills. You should be grateful.
Okay, Belen, name one other female character in the movie who did anything like that.
I would say his mistress. But I also think, like, oh, that's part of the character flaw, that, you know, he does give these responsibilities to people that, you know, essentially weren't raised in the mob and don't know, like, all the concrete rules, and like in some ways that ends up being his downfall, because especially with his mistress, like, her big issue was she was getting high on the drugs she was making, and then he also gets high on the drugs he's making. So I think they're representative of the flaws in the lifestyle, and I think it's good that, you know, the film sets that precedent, but and they kind of get hit with the consequences before the main characters do. It's foreshadowing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that they could have had one female character who was like, yeah, Saturdays for the husbands, Fridays for the boyfriends.
Just like the quote unquote strong female character who's just as involved in the mob. Her first scene is like, oh, just because I'm a woman, you think I should be making the lasagna on Sundays and raising the kids?
That's what this film needed. Like, she's about to door, and her husband's like, you're never here, and she's like, here's a little money, like, go buy yourself some Warhammer 40K figurines and paint them up real nice.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like with a character like that, it's like, no, because naturally their husband would be involved, because, you know, this is the 60s and 70s. Women couldn't do anything without their husband's permission, and so, like, imagine if eventually he gets killed off. It's like that's someone we're more connected to that doesn't really deserve it, because it's like they have people get killed off where it's like, yeah, they didn't really do anything. Like Spider, like his crime was just giving one liner to a guy that's been giving to him all night, where it's like, he didn't deserve to die, but we also didn't get to know Spider that well.
Yeah, I don't know. I wanted one, like, female empowerment mobster. That I think it would have made the film better. You know what it also could have used? Some LGBTQ representation. Why? There's no gay mobsters. There's no lesbian mobsters. Give me a transgender like assassin. No, it's 2024. I know it's an old movie, but
I mean, again, this movie takes place in the 60s and 70s. I'm not sure we will want to know their thoughts on queer rights. I think we're lucky we didn't get any like gay slurs in the film.
they did do one.
Oh,
They actually had two. Pesci, I forget. Pesci's like, "What do you think? I'm a fag."
okay. I did notice they use the N word. So like, I guess we're keeping track of different things. But like, going back to like the general character dynamics, I thought the way they set that up was smart. It's like a classic. Three-person dynamic. You had Tommy, who was like the wild card, very reckless. Jimmy was like all about business, and then Henry was somewhere in the middle. He kind of flipped in between, and then like I thought a smart thing was just the running gag that Henry did not like violence or blood. Like when they're trying to unbury the body, he's like throwing up, and they're teasing him about it. Like it's a fun group dynamic. I could see another version of this movie where it's just a fun comedy and we're along for the ride.
Yeah, I think I would watch this movie if they weren't mobsters. They were just three friends going on a road trip, but then they ended up getting into mobster like behavior. So like they're just like, yeah, let's just go to Tampa, and then like by the end of the movie, they're burying a body. It'd be you're right. That would be a nice dynamic.
I mean, that's almost what The Hangover is. It's like we're just going on a trip to Vegas now. Like, oh, turns out we have to return this tiger to Mike Tyson.
They killed Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah,
they introduced Samuel L. Jackson, gave him barely any lines, and then shot him in the back of the head.
Yeah, which is like I feel like if you're gonna do that, like I understand like they had to like start the process of like killing people off at some point. But it's like they did give him a scene where you kind of like learn about him and get connected to him like right before killing him, which like I thought was a smart use of time, because like a lot of the other guys that die, I feel like maybe you learn just as much about them throughout the film. The only difference is they have more screen time, so you feel more connected to them. And that's also just smart filmmaking. You're using them as like the environment of familiarity.
Yeah, it makes sense. It wasn't very believable. Like I don't think any of this stuff could actually go on, right? It's not a very believable film. Like they describe it as a biopic, but I don't know if they like, was there really a time in society where all this kind of, where every single cop was bought off? Like, could you go to prison and live in a nice apartment?
Well, I imagine it's probably easier than in the age of the internet when like background checks were very easily, because I imagine like a lot of prison guards, they could have just been bought off before they became prison guards. Like the mafia just says like, hey, you're gonna stay clean so you can apply for this job, and then when you get the job, you're gonna make things easy for us. And it's like, what's the prison gonna do? Check their Google search history? No. It's like the mafia is smart people.
You've just got to break pasta, and if they get upset, you can't have a job as a police officer. They're like, that's a little too, I don't know, Italian for us. Like, we don't mean to be racist. It's just it's a gangster thing.
Yeah, it's like where's your family from? Brooklyn. What part of Brooklyn? But yeah, I would say with that, I feel the filmmaking and pacing kept things very chaotic, which like I feel is the right vibe for this type of movie. Because I mean, you mentioned like glamorizing it. Like I think like the constant tension makes you feel, oh, okay, this isn't particularly a lifestyle I want to be part of.
I think they could have used more cooking. I don't know. I just think that like this film would have been better with more food involved. Like they did have some great scenes, like when they're cooking the sauce in prison and when they're cooking the sauce all coked up. But like I just feel like this film could have been like 30% making different sauces for pasta, and it would have had me a little more hooked.
I mean, I feel like maybe not the right direction because the thing is like one thing about these guys, you kind of see their skills apply very directly to the mob. It doesn't give you sense like they're great at anything else. I think like Henry actually like either dropped out of school or was just doing poorly. He definitely just wasn't showing up. Which like just a fun fact I found, apparently the real life Henry enlisted in the army, and during basic training he was stationed in North Carolina. He was dishonorably discharged because he started doing like mob type crime down there. So yeah, it's like he was just built for this life, and I think if you show like extensive skills that clearly apply outside of that, it's just like, oh, well, why doesn't he just become a chef?
Because he likes crime. He opens up, I want to be a gangster, but like he also enjoys good food. Just throw in some more cooking. He doesn't even have to do the cooking. Just like I love watching Italian people talk about cooking. You could have give me like 20 minutes of cooking.
Okay, is that actually a criticism, or are you just hungry?
I might be a little hungry.
Yeah, I was about to say, I know I ate right before this. But I mean, with like him wanting to be a gangster, I think when they show his childhood, they do kind of show like, oh, all the big opportunities are tied to the mafia. Like you couldn't throw a stone without hitting like a gangster or a mob front. And I think that's something to say, like, you know, he didn't respect his dad, and his dad like went to work in like a factory or something. I don't remember his exact job, but just something where he put in a lot of hours and made just barely enough to support like a wife and 7 kids, one in a wheelchair, and you know, he kind of looked at his dad as like, I don't want to be like that. And so that's why it's like, you know what, mob, that's going to give me the right opportunities.
He's like, I'm going to be a societal mooch. He's like, I'm going to complain about everyone who's working because they're not getting paid enough. So I'm just going to make it so all the cost of doing everything is higher.
I mean, I also feel like the mob is like insular. So like they're just relying on their own businesses for things. Like they have so many fronts. They got a front for everything. It's just like, oh, I need a nice place to eat. It's like, well, we got Tony running the right nice restaurant downtown. He'll hook you up, and that's how we get like that one shot of them like going through the kitchen into the restaurant.
I like that always bothers me. Like there's just something. Anytime they're like, yeah, we were made, or not the made men, but like, yeah, we were big names. Everyone knew us. And they're just like, they'll be like, we could go on any street and people will be like, thank you, Mr. Hill. And I'm like, I'm not buying it. Like they've got to get disrespected by someone who just has no clue who they are.
I mean, like, it's also like at the time, remember, this was like New York in the 60s and 70s. A lot of people had like generations of family that grew up on the block. So it was like people just knew each other.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, you ever meet like native New Yorkers that brag just like my family hasn't left this neighborhood for 3 generations. It's like those were most of the people there.
You got any more? I'm really I'm running low.
I also wanted to talk about like the voiceover because I know like especially in screenwriting circles you're told like don't use voiceover because like it's lazy writing and like breaks the fourth wall, takes the audience out of it. I thought the voiceover in this movie was really good. It was entertaining. You get their inner thoughts, and like I feel like it was very much used to like illustrate how like people could fall in love with this lifestyle because it is an addiction, which is also how like the cocaine addiction, also great analogy.
Yeah, it kind of does bring across that unreliability of the narrator.
Yeah.
Where like you're like, oh, okay, well he's saying that. I don't know how true everything that the narrator is saying.
Yeah, because it also it gives you sense like because all the narration is said in past tense, so you're like, oh, where is Henry Hill now? And then at the end of the movie, you find out, oh, he's just in a boring suburban house like all the people he used to make fun of.
Really, I think like the last part of the narration kind of sucks when he's just like, he's like, yeah, that's me, and then he starts like walking through the courtroom. I just think if they had dropped that part and it just ended with him as a rat, it would have been like, I don't think it was needed.
Okay, well, I mean, so I managed to see a couple other Scorsese films. I'm not sure if you heard these, but like Wolf of Wall Street and Killers of the Flower Moon. But he apparently does this in a lot of his movies, where he very much breaks the fourth wall and to talk directly to audience, and I think that's his way of like essentially distancing the audience from all the action a bit, because like watching a movie is such a thrill ride. It's easy to get really into it, but it's like, hey, just a reminder, these are real people that suffered real consequences that you don't have to because you're watching this on your couch.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's more a sign that you couldn't get your message across from the film itself. It's kind of like covering your ass, where you're like, you have 2 hours of movie and you're showing all these shots and the story, and then at the end you're like, I don't think they got it. Hang on, I need to like hammer it home. And you're like, yeah, we're the bad guys. You're like, yeah, we're the bad guys. Just in case you didn't get that. I don't know. I feel like it's lazy filmmaking.
Oh, okay. Counter argument. Some people are just dumb and need that.
If you should be able to like tell a story to dumb people without spelling it out so much.
Okay, there's a bunch of people who watch The Boys and don't realize Homelander's the bad guy.
Wait, Homelander's the bad guy? I thought that dude fucking rocked. I thought we were all just like, this dude fucks, like throwing that plane into the ocean. Like, yeah, fuck him. Why should he have to carry it every? Yeah, I don't know. I just like I feel like the point was made by the end of the film. He's a fucking rat. It's like every single thing that he does up until that last 5 minutes of the film is undercut by the last 5 minutes. There's no need for like, okay, guys, like I don't know. I just felt like they could have ended the film a little bit better.
I feel like the film it's not solely about him being a rat. It's about like building him up and then showing like, oh, this will always lead to a downward spiral.
Yeah, no, I feel like the betrayal was already there. Like, I almost think that by the end, you give him agency again by talking to the audience. I kind of just like the backed into a corner fucking loser turning on everything that he said throughout the film. Like, it like, I don't know, by the end, it makes him seem like he has more control than he actually does.
I mean, but I would argue that because throughout the film, he says stuff, he talks about himself in ways that like we as the audience observe are not true. So I would argue that is him just once again lying to himself.
I think it was kind of hammering a nail that's 2 inches deep into the wood.
Okay, but that's part of craftsmanship. You don't want those nails showing.
Yeah, but like now you're just denting the wood. You're fucking up integrity. It was like the story was solid. It was a solid story. I'll give it credit to that, but like I don't know.
All right. So anything else before we get into concessions?
The characters were very dishonest. They're very dishonest people. I'm just going to come out and say it. I don't know if these are the type of characters that need portrayal. Call me old fashioned, but I like it when my characters are telling the truth.
I mean, I would say that's a character flaw for them to overcome.
All right. Want to get into three things?
Yeah. All right. So now it's time for our concessions. This is where I give 3 things I didn't like about the movie, and Chris gives 3 things she liked. First thing I'll say, especially towards the beginning, like they don't give a good sense of like ages of the characters, like because they hire younger actors for younger Henry, younger Tommy. They don't do that with Jimmy, and then like once they're supposed to be like 20, it's just these grown adults playing them from like 20 to 40, and they just don't have any signs of aging.
Yeah. I think De Niro kind of came out of the womb looking like a 33-year-old like tough guy. Like he just came out of the womb like, wah, like what's up? You want to milk me? Why don't I milk you? Like,
yeah. I mean, it may also be like for some reason. I know this came out in 1990, but it was made during the 80s. During the 80s, people just looked old as fuck. I don't know why.
Well, it was the cigarettes and cocaine.
Yeah, yeah, probably. But it's stuff like, have you seen the cast of Cheers like first season, and we're older than half the cast?
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyone, I recommend you look up this NBA player named Clyde Drexler. He was like 25, looking like he had 50-year-old back pain.
There's some creative shots in this film. The Scorsese, he seems to know what he's doing with the camera.
Yeah,
like you kind of pointed it out when we watched together, but the going through the underbelly back up to the best seat in the house, where it's like it scores how they're doing things with traditional endings in terms of like making money and getting what you want in society, but by going in the back entrance, there are some great shots.
Yeah, and one shout out in there that like really feels understated. That moment where Karen goes to Jimmy for money, and he's just like, "Oh, just go around the corner and pick it up," and she like becomes suspicious, like, "I think he's trying to kill me," and just walks away. The camera like comes up in a way you think it's gonna reveal whether or not someone was like there to kill her, but it doesn't reveal anyone, and it's just like, oh, just the sense of uncertainty just sits with you. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
My next thing, I don't know why I wrote this way. Karen is a super Karen. Like I don't know. I feel like if you know you are marrying someone who does shady stuff, like, why are you staying in the dark? Just learn about the business. Know how to be helpful. I think that's the least she could have done.
It's a little misogynistic, but like it's a point. They did a great job of making terrible people seem like your friends. Like, as much as like they're like, Tommy is the biggest piece of shit ever. He's just murdering people for no reason, all out of his insecurities. But like, he also is a really fun guy, and I'd love to play golf with him. Like they did like these people, they make him very appealing to be around.
Yeah.
Where you're right. They make the life seem very glamorous, and they did a good job with that.
Yeah. Sends the wrong message to the kids, but it's still cool.
Yeah.
My last one, this isn't set in New Jersey. And I say this as someone who was born and raised in in Jersey. This movie is what people think of as New Jersey, and it took place in New York. All I'm saying, if we're going to get hit with the stereotype anyway, let's have some cool shit along with it.
Yeah, finally, this De Niro guy has some real talent. Like, those facial expressions are unmatched. I really hope this guy has a huge career one day. Like, he fucking De Niro rocks. I have to go back and like find some of his filmography.
Yeah. No, you know who his voice kind of reminds me, like, have you heard that audio clip of like you talking to me? That's what he reminds me of.
Oh yeah, no, I never saw that movie. It seemed a little dark. A little twisted for my mind. I kind of like to keep it more on like the PG-13.
Yeah. It probably is a hard watch.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now it's time for our closing statements.
You want it?
Yeah. So one could argue this film glamorizes the lifestyle at times, but I disagree. This is a story of addiction and downfall. Is it immersive? Yes. Maybe too much for its own good. It's still held up by solid performances and dedication from a filmmaker who definitely deserved another shot in Hollywood.
Ooh. Goodfellas, more like bad fellas. These dudes aren't people you want to associate with. Once again, Hollywood puts misogyny on a pedestal. Maybe this Scorsese guy should set aside his edgelord persona and give America what it wants. Female representation.
You know, I probably should have looked up more of what this guy did before the podcast, because like the stuff I've seen, it's like I enjoy it. I hope he gets more stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's it, guys.
All right. Yep. This has been another episode of Film versus Movie. Thanks for listening in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.